I think the devastating effects have been shared over and over again, and at this point, no Ghanaian can say they have not seen it or they've not experienced what is going on. And I'm happy Julia spoke before me. She's an environmental person, so my good friend, she understands these things better and has given a technical view to it. Everybody is affected by this. It's strange when people think, during the protest, you had people saying the Galamsey is going on in certain areas, so why are you protesting in Accra? I find it a bit ignorant and warped for anybody to think so. Look, I grew up living in Aldenta, in Accra, and if you lived anywhere around those areas, you know the problem with water. It has been a generational issue. People struggle to get water over there. So you see the effect and the difficulties you go through, the cost of living in those areas if you're not getting water supply. Ghana Water recently told us that they are currently operating around 30% capacity. And recently, I think I was watching your channel, and you had a whole MPs and MP. He was actually a former deputy minister or something, saying he went to Cape Coast, and the water that was coming out of the tap was not something he could use. Yes, I know watching. So these are damaging things everybody sees. Look, and it affects everybody. It's not just the water, but it's also the land. A friend of mine who's a mining engineer was explaining to me a process. He says it's called leaching, which the illegal miners use to get the gold from the land. And they basically poison the land with these heavy metals. Eventually, people plant food, they get leached along, all these heavy metals, and nobody tests for these things in the food we eat. So you live in Accra, you live in Tamale, you live wherever, these things affect you. As a country, recently we heard that our cocoa production has gone down. And it's because people are cutting down the trees to go mine gold, and they're doing it illegally. It affects everybody. So how people think this thing is a problem of certain people, it's not a problem of the nation, it is strange. And I think it comes down to one simple thing. I've always been saying that in Ghana, we do not value lives. We think everything is just politics, everything is about money. We do not think about the consequence of everything we do. So if this will make me rich, I do not care about the consequence. We do not think that a person's life is more valuable than any of these things we chase. Look, I used to, in 2013, and I remember this very well, I was a medical student at the time, and I went to do a community health district rotation in a place in the Ashanti region called Manson Kwanta. There's a hospital there specifically called Agroyesu. Those days, there was a lot of talk about Galamsey, and we may have forgotten so soon, but in 2016, Galamsey was actually one of the electoral issues that caused the ex-president Mahama to lose the election. People raised alarm about it, and there was a lot of talk about it. And even as of 2013, in Mansour Agroyesu, I saw people doing illegal mining by the roadside. They weren't doing it in the bushes. They were doing it by the roadside. And I still have the pictures from those. They were doing it by the roadside. So it has been going on for a long time. In 2016, it became an electoral issue. It has become an electoral issue again. And people say we're talking about it simply because you want, you have a political agenda. That argument is strange for me. It's extremely strange for me. Look, this thing will kill people. If there's a publication by Professor Osei Sampeni, he's a pathologist in Panache.
Yeah, we spoke to him,
Yeah, and he was talking about the occurrence of abnormal births, all these birth deformities. These things can be nailed down to some of these heavy metals which are found in our water and in the soil directly. There's no way around it. We are struggling to deal with kidney diseases in Ghana. This can actually be nailed down directly to this. Recently,
he actually does. He traces them to the heavy metals. He does the investigations in the mining areas.
Exactly. So some of these things, these are problems that will affect each and every one of us. So when someone says, let's wait till election is over before we talk about it, it's a needless attempt to gaslight people. What happens in the time that we wait? We wait for elections to come on. Okay, between now and then, the number of lives that will be lost. And then we wait for a new government to come and form its own government, appoint people. And then what happens during that time? Is that we do not see the consequence of these things. And sometimes I joke about it, but I actually believe it. I'm a Christian, but I'm not too sure I still believe that God has an appointed time for anybody to die, because if he really did, then unless part of that plan was to locate you in Ghana. Look, I practice in Ghana. I practice outside Ghana before moving into the job that I do now. And I tell you that people die needless deaths. And they would not have died those deaths just by a simple change of location. So some of these things, they are devastating. I am more worried about the gaslighting attempts that go on. they say it should not be politicized. I don't think it is up to any politician to tell us not to politicize it. When we say it should not be politicized, that message or that statement goes to people like myself, like Juliet, like ordinary Ghanaians who have the power to vote and who are going to vote in December, to say that if you support the MPP or you support the NDC, your opinion on this matter or your actions on this matter should not be informed by your political support. That is what it means when we say do not politicize it. But for the politician who has stayed in power all these years and looked on for this to fester on, he cannot tell us not to politicize it because it is your job. And the worst thing they say is that it is collective responsibility. It is not collective responsibility. People have been voted to fix this. People have been appointed to fix this. People are paid salaries to fix this. People have been given power and authority over security forces, over all the state institutions and apparatus required to fix this. They cannot push that responsibility onto the ordinary Ghanaian and say it is our collective responsibility. It isn't. At best, what it is for us is a moral responsibility. But of course, nobody has ever been jailed for morality. That cannot be a case. So you see, our responsibility in this case is to put them on the edge. If election is what will scare them into doing it, then we need to do it. And we need to push when we need to push. This thing did not start now. In the previous government, we saw them do something. I mean, before 2020, we saw Amewu run into the forest with the security forces, and eventually the water cleared a bit. And then we've come back to this point. So when else do we wait? Recently, I was watching, there was in Central Region, the Central Region Ghana Water Company, they said, the turbidity levels had come down, and they were sort of jubilating. Had come down to about 9,000 NTU. The WHO standard is 5 or less. 5 or less. So if it has come down to 5,000, imagine how much we still need to do to get it cleared. This is a big issue. We should not allow anybody.
There are doubts about that, and even how the Ghana Water frames that statement to give praise to local authorities, activities that they have done that appear suddenly to have led to that reduction in the turbidity level. There are doubts about that, and I join those who are doubtful about it, because only 2 weeks ago, they had told us that the turbidity level had risen to as much as 14,000.
NTUs.
Yes, 14,000. And only a week later, after all of the, the heightened, crusade, thanks to them, they come back to us very quickly to say that it has reduced so suddenly, dramatically, magically to that point.
Some say it has reduced to 9,000. The standard is 5 or less. It has reduced to 9,000. The standard is 5 or less. See the gap. See the gap. You can't even think how that is something to celebrate. It's costing them so much more money now to purify the water. And as Juliet said, and many other experts have also said, they do not test for these heavy metals in the water. So even then, they cannot confirm or they cannot assure you that the water you are drinking is safe. These are major problems.
All right.
Whether it will take election or it will take agitation, whatever time. Look, people need to do what we need to do. The police can arrest 32 people. Yes, they can arrest 50 people, but they cannot arrest 100,000 people if every Ghanaian is getting on board with it. And we need to get what we need to do. We need to do what we need to do to get this problem fixed. It's a major catastrophe.
Well, the bit about collective responsibility and how that affects you, really the concern also is that do we not have a responsibility as a people also, while we just put in everything on our leaders?
Like I said, we have a moral responsibility, and that moral responsibility is to agitate, is to talk about it. It may even be to threaten them with electoral defeat if they need to do. But of course, you cannot send me to prison or to the police for not fulfilling my moral responsibility, if you want to call it so. I cannot go into the forest to go fight these Galamsey people. They have guns. If you can have community people coming together to say, okay, we are going to stop them. But I think I saw a video recently somewhere in the Seshri area where people went into the forest to go attack the Galamsey people. And they were holding guns. Now, if there's a shootout, anybody dies over them. There's really no difference between that hooliganism that would occur in that situation and what actually the police are charging the protesters for. So it is not a fight you and I can take on. We have people who are paid a salary, very good salaries, to fight this. We have people who have power and authority and control over all the licensing and regulation.
Thank you very much. And could you take us to our next guest? And I'll